but you are finally in competition with other units. Now, before, when the market was really tight for rentals, you could essentially just throw it up there and everything would work out. But right now, people are looking at various things, especially the brand new builds that I talked about earlier in the show. They basically all look the same. So you need to make yourself stand out. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bamboo, Vancouver's property management and investment podcast. This week, we're going to be covering some of the stats that are going on in Greater Vancouver. We're going to try not to put you to sleep because obviously stats can be quite boring, but more importantly, we're going to have some actionable items to help it out. So if rents are falling right now in Vancouver, how are landlords thriving? The latest stats that we had, the month to month has gone down $52 per month in the rentals, which is actually a fairly substantial amount, as well as $114 from year to year. So come these past stats, they've gone down 100 and change per year, which can add up actually over a while, even though theoretically it's only around 1,200 and change per year that you're going down. So we're going to touch about some different actionable things to take care of this. Now, with some of these stats that we're covering, they're all based on one-bedroom unfurnished units. The reason for this is because that is very basic. The status quo, obviously a two-bedroom will be worth more, a house will be worth more, and add in your other variables such as in-suite laundry and stuff like this. So without that, we'll just get right into it. So as you gathered from the top of the show, the market is trending down. It's a bit of a soft market right now. This will pass, of course. Some of the things that you're going to have to look out for as a property manager or do-it-yourself landlord, of course, is that some tenants are listening to the news. Other places such as BuzzFeed or whatever is essentially telling everyone that it's a fire sale. That is not the case. Yes, the market is correcting and it is softening a bit. But that being said, it's not a fire sale. So do prepare yourself that you will have some tenants coming in and asking for quite insane discounts. We've been seeing that a lot out in the field with myself and our other colleagues throughout the industry and that. So just prepared for that so that you're not feeling like they're disrespecting you. They've just been led to believe that there's this huge discounts on everything and may try to just put in obscene price discounts for no real good reason other than just not wanting to pay as much, which in all honesty, who wants to pay more if you don't have to? So one of the questions that we have to figure out, and we do get answered from a lot of landlords, is why is the market softening? So of course, everyone wants to know why it's softening and essentially where we're going. There's a few different reasons why it's softening. We're going to touch on three of them in particular. The first one being is that there's a rising vacancy. Before, there was a very low vacancy in Greater Vancouver, therefore, simple supply and demand. Low supply, high demand, makes for a higher price. Now, what has helped soften this market and brought in these rising vacancies is namely the anti-flipping tax, which was just sort of almost randomly introduced. And so a lot of people who had bought these new builds suddenly are going to be saddled with a 20% additional tax if they sell right away. So, of course, this forced a lot of landlords that were not planning to be landlords. So this here has brought a lot of properties onto the market right away and thus saturated the market. So there's a lot to select from. So that is one part of it. That being said, of course, in the future, after these 2 years expire, I suspect that we'll see a lot of these places come for sale. So we may see a market correction on the sales side and the rental side may start rising in price again because all of these places are going to be sold. Another thing that's causing it is just the sheer cost. People have been starting to move away. Most of us have friends or family who just said, I'm fed up with it. I'm not going to live in Vancouver. I'm not going to pay these prices anymore. And they're going to move to Alberta, Saskatchewan, anywhere really that you have to shovel winter. We have it pretty good out here for our winters, right? So they have been moving away. As well as we have changed the immigration policies in Canada, so there's less students coming here from other places in the world, which was a very large segment of our rentals, especially obviously around UBC, SFU, even in the US, Douglas College, and in Surrey, for instance. Again, going on with the vacancy in Surrey, there are a heap of properties for sale right now. So that is for rent right now. So that is causing a lot of the places to have to compete with each other, which is a race to the bottom. So these are some of the main things that are driving it as far as the rising vacancy part of what is softening the market. Also, of course, we couldn't go and talk about real estate and rentals without dealing with our friends to the south there. So a lot of people are concerned about what's going on with the trade war / tariffs, and they're concerned about whether their job will still remain. So a lot of people are basically just staying where they are because they're not sure if this is going to trickle down and affect them as far as their job goes. So a lot of tenants are basically staying put. And again, because they're staying put, this isn't letting anyone raise the rents. And therefore, all of the places are starting to drop collectively as far as rents go. Also, some of the tenants have been taking advantage of the softening of the sales market and starting to buy. So they're simply no longer going to be renting anymore and therefore making a vacancy because they're taking advantage of the lower prices and actually becoming an owner instead of just renting still. So these are some of the main factors that are driving what's softening the rental market. These things are all subject to change, of course. So again, this will likely pass. It's a good way to ride it out. We will have some actionable items of what to do and how to make sure that you last through this sort of downturn of a market for the rentals, simply for the fact that it hasn't had a downturn for quite some time. We've had 3 months of it gradually trending down, which is rather unusual, and it's been a substantial amount. So just keep in mind that this will pass. Another thing that has changed is the Airbnb rules. Now, the Airbnb rules were presented in May 2024, where they had said that the rules were introduced and places had to be registered and all that. Fast forward to May 2025, now they must be registered, or there are some pretty heavy fines that are associated with that. So that will get some people talking, and as well, it has had a major effect that we've seen in the furnished markets. What has happened, we've seen throughout our company, is that the furnished markets, they kind of got the rules in 2024, played along a little bit, but now that the rules actually have teeth, there's a lot of furnished places that are coming onto the market, and the owners are trying desperately to get the same money that they were getting for that Airbnb short-term rentals, but they can't get it now. And they also don't want to have to go and deal with the fact that they have to get rid of all their furniture in their place. So this is just an extra headache for those owners. And we've seen a fair amount of the furnished units come on, but they haven't been moving, not at all. So with a softening market and the lack of desire for furnished units, again, touching back on what we said with the immigration policies changing, as well as the students changing, this has caused the furnished units to kind of stick around. So if you're sitting on a furnished unit that's not renting right now, you may want to consider unfurnishing it, because that might be what's holding you back. We've had multiple instances, myself, in the past couple of months, at least 3 units that were not renting, but as soon as we unfurnished them, phones started ringing because people wanted to move in and they already were living here, so they already had furniture. Hence, they didn't need the furnished unit. So if you're sitting on that, do think about getting rid of your furniture. It might be the one thing that's holding you back. Now, I had said it before that we're going to talk about some actionable ways to get this fixed. So to deal with anything in the rentals and in the sales side of the market, there's really basically only 4 parts to it, which I touched on in the previous show. But the 4 parts are price, product, location, and time. Now, our product, of course, is what you're renting. So if you have a place that's done up, everything looks good, everything's fixed, works properly, and is clean, that's your product. So you've done good. That's the best you can do. You have your location. Obviously, you can't move a building, so that would make no sense. And then there's, of course, price. Price is the one thing that you can edit easily to make sure that you can get your place rented. And of course, now what I've added is time. If you're trying to get a higher price in the current market where they're all lower, you can wait it out. You can wait and hope that you get your price at a cost, of course. So chances are that if you're dealing in a softer market right now, do take a look at all 4 of these and figure out where you are. Probably is going to result in you needing to adjust the price. And of course, there are a few other variables such as pets, which I will be talking about later with a quite interesting little statistic. And we'll bring that up as well so you can take a look at it because it's quite substantial, actually. The other thing that you can do is if you have tenants currently, maintain the relationship with them. Because as I said, the markets have softened. It might be worth it for the tenant to give notice and move across the street and save $300 a month. So if you have tenants right now, don't increase the rent, or at least look around to see what's happening in that area to see if it's worth it, because it's risk versus reward. Is it worth it to risk your tenant looking around to see what the other prices are versus reward of getting that extra couple of bucks from the small percentage that has been allowable from the government? So if you've got some tenants, maintain with that. Also, perhaps offer them any upgrades, or maybe if you've been putting off that repair, get around to it. Go out there and fix the thing that you should have been in the first place anyways, by the way. But make sure that you get those upgrades done. Maybe the fridge is not working all that well, offer them a new one. It might be worth it just to make sure that your current tenant stays at the higher rent that you've been getting and not have them start looking around to see if there's anything better. Because as soon as you send in a rent increase, the first thing that all tenants do is look around to see what the price is of everything else in comparison. And right now, they'll be lower. So make sure that you maintain your relationships with your tenants. Now, going back to a place that if it is not occupied, you're going to have to step up your marketing. Now, I've talked about this on one of our previous shows on May 29th. So you can scroll back and check out that one on our other show. It's a nice plug for our own show here. But you are finally in competition with other units. Now, before, when the market was really tight for rentals, you could essentially just throw it up there and everything would work out. But right now, people are looking at various things, especially the brand new builds that I talked about earlier in the show. They basically all look the same. So you need to make yourself stand out. So we're talking about videos, video tours, maybe look into using professional photography, even use virtual staging or actual staging. Because if you think about it, if you've got 19 properties in the same building that all look the same with the same colors and they're all brand new, how are you going to make yourself stand out? So do make sure that you understand that you are now in competition with other units. You need to make yourself stand out and you need to look as professional as possible. Which leads to another thing that you may want to look into, just hiring a professional. There's a lot of companies out there that do placement only. And what that means is they will go out, find a tenant for you, do all the advertising, all the showing, all the background checks, and use all the tools that I just mentioned to find you a great tenant. And then after that, hand the reins over to you, which might be a much better thing for you so that you don't have to keep on going through all of these showings because there's so many places for these guys to look at. So you may want to consider hiring a professional and at bare minimum, step up your advertising game and get professional photos done and get some stronger marketing out there for you, as well as make sure that you return their calls. Numerous times it comes up that the tenant will ask and then the owner won't respond. So of course, they move on to the next one because there's one downstairs probably. Now, I did touch on before about the pets, and I want to just cover that. We just did a high overview of Craigslist, which is where the stats came from. We took the one screenshot of Greater Vancouver, basically, and with no dogs and no cats allowed, the number was 8,247 units available. This is all the units, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom houses, all of them. Then we added allowing for dogs and allowing for cats, that dropped it down to 3,086. For those of you who've taken out your calculator, that cut the competition down by 62%. That is a huge drop. And if you're looking for a tenant, that shrinks their pool down substantially. So you may want to consider strongly allowing them to be there. And the reason for this as well is a lot of people are afraid to have pets because they're afraid of damage. Pet damage doesn't happen overnight. So you hear these horror stories about a dog that chewed up all the windowsills and baseboards and peed all over the rug and so on and so forth. That did not happen overnight. So if you're doing your checks, you can come in, notice that happen and say, hey, we need to fix this, and then discuss it with the tenant. And because of the aforementioned shrinking of the market, they will probably be on board with that because it's more difficult to find a place that allows for pets. So do consider this in your marketing mix, because this might be one of the things that will help you get a tenant and not have to drop your price drastically for your rent. Going back into the pricing again, audit your pricing. Be wary of the train, for instance, the SkyTrain, that is. The time that it takes to get from Brentwood Station to Lougheed Station, both in Burnaby, is 17 minutes. Now, if you're desperately trying to hold on to that Brentwood because of the name Brentwood, it might be worth the $300 to the tenant to travel 17 minutes more east and save that every month. So do take this into account, that because of mass transit and things like this, that the rents are now almost competing with each other. So if you've got a place in Brentwood or Lougheed, it's okay to compare these two and maybe drop your prices outside of that range, simply for the fact that both Brentwood and Lougheed have a lot of the same amenities now. They've got the SkyTrain, obviously, which I just talked about, as well as restaurants, access to the Highway 1, all this stuff. So do look outside of just your little bubble, because now Brentwood and Lougheed are kind of competing versus each other because it's shrinking down. So this is another way to think about auditing your price accordingly, as well as obviously look around in the area to make sure that you're in line with what's going on in the market, even though it hurts sometimes. But as the saying goes, the market may speak and be cruel, but it doesn't lie. So do take a look at that. Also, you may want to think about the big picture and the fact that if you're not covering the nut, i.e. covering your mortgage, insurance, strata fees, and taxes with the rent, you may be dragging, let's say, $100 for this example. So that is not ideal, of course, but if you think about it in the big picture of things, that if you're dragging this $100 for 12 months, that's $1,200 in the year, chances are that your place is going to go up more than $1,200 in that year as far as your equity goes and the actual value of the property. So therefore, when you eventually sell it or take that equity back out, you will probably be ahead. So try not to focus too much on the fact that you're not covering the nut anymore, which is quite difficult, especially in this current softening of the market, and focus on the big picture. You may also want to check out the episode that we just did 2 weeks ago with Chris. He was talking about some advanced mortgage techniques to actually turn that into a bigger tax write-off, and you may in fact end up ahead again. So do check out that one. Again, we're plugging our own show. I'm well aware of that. So overall, do understand that this will likely pass, and just have to wait out the downturn, because it's been quite some time since rents have actually substantially gone down. So make sure that you just try to keep your head above the water and everything will work out fine. Now, we're going to be away for next week, so there won't be an episode next week, but we'll be returning on August 7th with everything to do with property investment and property management in Greater Vancouver. So if you've been listening this long, I really appreciate it. We'll see you on August 7th. My name is Haze. This has been Bamboo, Vancouver's property management and investment podcast.